Japan 1970. The whole country is destroyed and filled with fire. Meanwhile in Tokyo, a group of magicians are trying to stop this chaos. Soon one of them orders another volley and the street is filled with scarlet fire, dissipating at the place of impact as standing, and there is a huge monster with a crystal in his chest. A group of wizards lost heart, because these creepy creatures can't even be scratched. In delirium, the captain trembling loses the will to fight, and then the monsters begin their retaliatory attack. Pillars of the brightest flame appear from his huge paws and head towards his victim, but she does not reach the goal. A little more and there would be no dust left of them. But suddenly a white-haired magician appeared out of nowhere, who blocked this an unthinkable attack with one wave of the hand. He thanks the guys for their efforts and orders them to leave the rest to him. The same overflowing with gratitude and tears carry out the decree and retreat. One of them was in no hurry to leave the place of the incident, because how can you leave everything to him alone? But then the guy is called a dumbass and asked, does he really not know who this man is? This white-haired one is the founder of magic. He is the strongest magician in history. This man is the famous Ichiki Atsumi. This is the character standing in front of them. From this soldier lets out snot again. At that time, on the battlefield, the remaining magician is surrounded by various creatures and a previously familiar monster is trying to deliver a fatal blow. But this blow was too slow, and the white-haired one strikes back. His hand emits the brightest purple light, and then an explosion occurs that hits monsters in the neighborhood. But the fight does not end there. A new crowd of mutants approaches him, and he welcomes them cordially. Once a bunch of monsters appeared all over the world. This event subsequently became known as a disaster. The weapons and knowledge of humanity were completely useless against these monsters, but soon people opened their eyes and noticed the possibilities of magic. Only with the help of this mysterious force it was possible to resist bloodthirsty monsters, and this battle between humanity and monsters lasted for decades. But at the moment, the first of the most powerful magicians, only he could save the world, and this burden fell on his shoulders. An extraordinary creature appeared before him, a demon lord, a monster of the highest rank, a disaster boss. He has a huge magical power and pressure. Despite the fact that the monster was wounded, he begins to attack first. Suddenly the sky was lit up and a powerful attack was directed at the magician, but he manages to put up a magic barrier and successfully survives. However, the fact that the monster starts with a spell of the 14th level, and in this state, it really provokes the white-haired magician. His thoughts are visited by the idea that the monster wanted to end the fight with one strong attack. This was by no means the case. The creature is already preparing the next spell, and this time even stronger than the last one. The magician is unpleasantly surprised. Now he has to block six-dimensional compound magic. For this he uses the life force of nature and blocks the way with stone slabs. After a split second, the blow overtakes the stone barrier, but the guy does not give up and puts all his strength to withstand this magical attack. For a second, a warm and snow-white light illuminates it. Time seems to have stopped, and then an explosion of unprecedented power occurs. The whole sky was covered with fire and dissolved. The flames spat out the strongest magician from its embrace. Flying up to the ground, the bloody guy does a somersault in the air and successfully lands on the ground, but immediately he is overtaken by the demon lord. The guy is desperate. This monster is strong. He is the strongest he has met, and while the white-haired magician is in thought, his fate is getting closer and closer. But he can't afford to lose. It's too much responsibility, and realizing that he has no choice, he decides to use his last trump card. Immediately, the guy is entangled in a blue glow, an extraordinary pressure is in the air, and soon his true power is released and resists the demon's magic. The power of magic is determined by its level, and the level depends on the number of magic circles. The highest level that the demon lord could reach is the 14th. Among all the magic circles, another one appears, and the limit of the white-haired magician is the spotted level. He will launch his last attack, the 15th level, absolute emptiness. The whole city is filled with the brightest light, absolutely everything was absorbed by it, and the great demon was wiped off the face of the earth. From the place of the fight, only the earth and the remnants of the demon lord remained, which slowly scattered in the wind. The exhausted magician falls. He finally defeated the boss, thanks to which the disaster ended. But he used up all his mana. It was death, but to die as a great hero and sage, it's not a bad way for him to leave. He is satisfied with his life, and after that the white-haired hero closes his eyes. At the same moment, a bright and warm soul breaks out of his body. it rushes to the light and instantly leaves its shell. But instead of the light, she goes in the other direction. She flies up and flies into the hospital rooms, and there she moves into one seriously ill patient, after which a bright light illuminates the ward. The kid first moved his hand, but soon jumped up from the hospital bed. The magician is in shock. He is alive despite the fact that he has used up all his magic. It's hard to believe. However, something is wrong here, and he realizes the essence of what happened. Standing in front of the mirror, he does not understand who the hell is this. In shock, he continues to stand and look at his reflection. At this moment, the attending physician and the nurse come into the ward, and in front of them a stunned patient. Putting him on the bed and removing the bandages, the doctors were deeply amazed, because the patient was in critical condition after a car accident, but now he is completely healthy. It feels like as they were healed by holy magic. But the fact is that the body of the former white-haired magician is indeed automatically healed by holy magic. While his nurse began to dress him, he began to talk nonsense about the fact that he was fighting monsters and his magical power was completely depleted. The employees were strained by this statement, and they decided to ask the name of the victim and what year it is. The same one without hesitation calls himself Ichiki Minato, and also that it is 1970th year. Doctors assume that this is a post-traumatic syndrome or memory damage. The fact is that in fact his name is Kusanagi Minato, and it's 2022 years on the street now. This information shocks the great magician, but it doesn't look like these people are lying. After that, the kid starts looking at the room. He sees the TV. He has become so thin and the image is so clean. After that, he stumbles upon a calendar that really shows 2022nd year, and he also stumbles upon an unknown small device in the hands of an employee. Now the black-haired man realizes that he is really in the future. Doctors begin to tell that the disaster that the kid was talking about happened 50 years ago, and since then this has not happened again. This information surprised the guy very much, and he asks a question about monsters. Monsters exist in this world, but there are few of them now as a quiet time. These words calm Minato. Thank God he has achieved peace. But the doctor interrupts his calm and says that Ichiki Minato is dead. During the great disaster he sacrificed himself to save humanity. Now the magician finally understands what happened. He died at that time and reincarnated in Kusanagi Minato. But why? A few weeks later, the guy enters the apartment of a multi-story building and gets acquainted with the room, Kusanagi, that is, with his room. Reading the notes, he learns that his parents died when he was still a child, and his foster parents were unfriendly and kicked him out to boarding school. Since then, the kid has been living on an inheritance from his deceased parents. His life has been hard, but now it's not about that. The main character falls on the bed and thinks about everything that happened. There is no magic of reincarnation. Could it be that his reincarnation is God's handiwork? Or is it all a pure accident? Examining the documents of Kusanagi, he learns about the Magic Academy. In his pastime there was no reason for the existence of such an institution. And it seems quite interesting in the past to the strongest hero. Suddenly, a melody comes from a bag with things. The guy pulls out an incomprehensible sound source, does not understand who Tadano is and what to do with this device. Without thinking twice, he decides to throw away this useless item. Soon the boy comes to a huge castle. This is the Academy of Magic, an amazing place. Going to school as an adult is a novelty for a guy and a little exciting. It's certainly great and all that. But what the hell happened to magic in such a short period of time? Looking at the rest of the students, the guy is deeply disappointed. He does not believe in what is happening, because their power is hardly one destiny compared to the newcomers of his time. What did these people forget at the academy? Intoxicated by reality, he continues to go to the academy, entering the office too. He sits down in his seat and looks forward to the start of classes. For him it's like an explosion from the past, just as exciting. He wonders if he has any friends here? And immediately a strong stomp is heard behind him. Turning around, he sees a group of rednecks with a red-haired man at the head. He is very unhappy that the loser dared to ignore his call. However, the black-haired man does not recognize him, and the boy in a fit of rage tries to kick him off his feet and demolishes the harmless desk, announcing that his name is Tadano. And then it comes to Minato, that this is the name that was displayed on the phone, so he met his friend. The red-haired man is glad that this loser remembered him, and now demands payment for the so-called friendship and holds out his hand. At the same time, the black-haired man happily shakes hands with his friend, but the stunned Tadano was not talking about this. He needs money, and taking the loser by the shirt, he demands it, because the boy has a lot of wealth left from his deceased parents as an inheritance. At the same time, the magician finally realizes that Kusanagi Minato was bullied. The guy infuriates the red-haired one more and more, and he swings for a blow, but a blue-haired girl comes into the classroom. She is the very embodiment of beauty. Her smile, form, and everything else all shines, at least so it seems to the bully, and fascinated by the unearthly beauty, he lets the loser go and promises to talk to him later. Angry, the red-haired man leaves the room. The lesson began. The topic of today's lesson is the Great Calamity. At that time monsters began to appear all over the world and humanity fell into despair, but the discoverer of magic, the great sage Ichiki Minato, thought otherwise. He did not give up and defeated all the monsters himself and soon stumbled upon the demon lord, whom he crushed by sacrificing his own life. Since then, the disaster has never returned. The topic of this lesson did not interest the guy in any way, but the girl listened to her with interest without missing a single detail of the narrative. And when the teacher asked a question about the identity of Ichimi Minato, she happily raised her hand to answer this question. For her, he was the only survivor of the first disaster, as well as the first magician, and he was also the reason why the Kamui Magic Academy was built. He became a world hero for every magician, and she is no exception. The teacher approves of the student's answer and also begins to praise the great magician. It's a pity he doesn't know that this talent is sitting at the desk and is incredibly valuable, with so many praises in such a short time. He deeply regrets that he came to school. This lesson became a severe torture for him. But soon he was lost in his thoughts again. From now on in the world so calmly, the wizard could not enjoy it in any way. Soon the bell rang. At the same time the teacher announces that classes are over for today, as well as that tomorrow there will be an assessment of the magical power of students. This statement does not provoke the red-haired impudent man a little, and he is eager to see how much Minato has shitty magic. This guy talks too much and is already pretty tired of the magician. Intending to ignore the brute, he touches the black-haired man to the quick, starting to insult his parents, who probably also do not have magical power, but he certainly does not have parents. After that a group of rednecks started laughing behind his back. Then, Minato turned around and publicly called him a bastard. He could not stand such a simple provocation, decided to use his fire magic. Classmates began to cool his ardor, because it is forbidden to use magic in the classroom. However, the red-haired man, blinded by hatred, still decides to take a desperate step and attacks a defenseless classmate, but he continues to stand motionless. The blue-haired woman tries to help the poor guy, but it's too late. A bright explosion is heard in the office and the girl scolds Tadano, because how could he use magic because of a petty quarrel? But he begins to justify that it is not his fault. The smoke completely disappears from the room, and before the eyes of classmates, Minato appeared whole and unharmed. Many were stunned by such a phenomenon, but the black-haired man only scratched his head. Tadano and everyone else were shocked, because he was not injured after he received a magic blow directly. In fact, the kid does not even need to use a spell to protect himself from magic of this level, because you can easily protect yourself with a simple magic barrier. After that, the one who did not suffer from magic begins to speak. He endured all the bullying, just because his opponent is a child. But he crossed the line, he should be punished. After saying the last words, a mysterious aura enveloped the young man. The air was filled with the purest mana, and the whole class was under such pressure that none of those present could move. Everyone was dumbfounded and did not understand what was going on here. But this did not bother the young hero. He unshakably continued his offensive. And when he reached his victim, he stretched out his hand. The red-haired man was already on the verge, and then the teacher bursts into the office. He is waiting for an explanation. Did someone use magic? But after examining the office, the elder did not see anything like that. And Minato, with an innocent smile on his face, suggested that maybe someone used magic on the street, but there are no magic club classes in the courtyard. At the same time, the teacher asks about the smoke, but even here the resourceful guy says that he came from the outside and the elder has nothing to do but believe the kind Minato. And he leaves the office in order to find the culprit, and orders all the students to return to their seats. A harmless-looking student is already thinking about creating false evidence in order to hush up this case. But some people will not forget this incident, especially the red-haired one, but this does not bother the guy. He is more concerned that the teachers have too weak a level and they will not be able to fill up even a monster, because if that disaster is over, the monsters still remain. And he decides to go look at them. Old Shibuya. A black figure flashes in the moonlight and quietly lands on one of the buildings. Shibuya has changed a lot, this is the only thing he noticed. But this cannot stop, and the hero continues his way flying with the help of magic circles. Continuing the flight, he did not feel any monsters in the area, but suddenly the guy detects the aura of one person and monsters, so he decides to accelerate. The frightened girl was attacked by hungry monsters. They were already ready to attack, but a young man in a dark robe appears in front of the woman and quickly deals with the creatures with the help of stone spikes. In an instant, all the dark creatures were defeated, and the girl was saved. The kid turned around and examined the tear-stained victim. On it hung the emblem of the magical police. Asking her to be careful next time, he leaves the place of the incident. The girl does not have time to thank her savior, as his figure disappeared into the night's surface. There was no chapel to her interest. Who was this unknown, some outstanding magician? He doesn't even seem to have cast spells. Since the guy just reincarnated, he doesn't want to stand out and carefully hid his face. But to think that a monster of such a low level could kill her, the magic level of the police also dropped a lot. Judging by what he saw, it can be determined that people at this time are not able to defeat monsters. Not only students, but also the police, magicians have weakened, and this is a fact. But it's not so bad, because it looks like even in this era they need a hero like him. Having finished praising himself, he decided to destroy all the monsters in the area so that they would not increase the number of victims. The next day they have an assessment of magical power according to the plan. The professor stands in front of a huge magic crystal and is going to analyze all the students. This crystal will allow you to measure the level of magical power and find out what element the student has. This is a very important test. Everything is much worse than he expected, and the teachers are there too. Now people are not able to assess the level of magical power on their own and use stupid devices. The feeling of magical power is the basis of all magic. At this stage of his experiences, he is distracted by a blue-haired girl. People from the class were very surprised by this, because the popular Mizuha spoke to such a loser. She speaks to him for the first time and on occasion decides to introduce herself as she should. She is the second daughter of the Mizuha family, aristocratic magicians, and her name is Mizuha Yuka. She said it very cool. However, Minato asks her again about the aristocratic magicians, putting her in an awkward position. She decides to explain that her family is at the head of the four-element aristocratic magicians. All this is a complete show-off. There were no aristocrats in his time, and he had never heard of the surname, Mizuho. Deciding to check her level of magical power, he sees that she is quite weak, especially for a girl from a kind of outstanding magicians. And while he is evaluating her strength, she is very indignant. This guy does not put her in anything. He should appreciate and be glad that such a noble person as she spoke to him, but he does not care. There was another disgruntled, red-haired man watching the whole situation from a distance, and very angry because how this bastard dares to talk to Yuka. Trying to quickly end the prolonged pause, the guy is interested in what purpose the lady aristocrat from the genus of magicians is addressing him. The girl is incredibly upset. This guy is also dissatisfied. Having pulled herself together and preserved her dignity as an aristocrat, she is interested in how the boy survived yesterday's attack and did not suffer at all. When she came to, she asks a question about yesterday, but a teacher appears behind her, who calls the remaining guys to assess their abilities, and Minato, with a smile on her face, uses this opportunity to avoid interrogation. She tries to stop him, but soon realizes that she will understand his abilities after a magic test. At the moment, a red-haired man is passing through it. He is soaked in a red aura and touches a magic crystal. The equipment announces that the level of magic power of Tadano Juna is equal to thousands of units, and its element is fire. The guy is happy because he has become stronger since the last time. On the side, the incarnation of the great magician stands and wonders, if this weak kid has 1,000 units, then what would have been the numerical standard of strength 50 years ago? The next test is Mizuha Yuka. The girl was enveloped in a blue aura. Touching the crystal, he announced that the level of magical power of this girl is equal to 2,000 units, as well as her element water. These two have the highest rates among this year's students, and Tadano does not hesitate to brag about it. But even without this, the rest of the students notice that these two have every chance to become excellent magicians. But here, Minato was completely morally broken. Are they serious? 2,000 is the highest figure among students. At this time, the blue-haired aristocrat, in her heart, was proud of herself, and she can't wait to find out what this arrogant boy thinks about her strength and her kind of Mizuhi. He won't look at her with a dissatisfied face anymore, so she thought, and shone with happiness. However, Minato can no longer look at it. Now it's his turn. Crystal calls the guy. Many have started whispering about this Nidaknik, because he has the worst indicators every time. He has good grades, but the ability to magic is 0. He is absolutely incompetent, and the red-haired one longs for the moment when this loser is late before Yuka. However, 2 is very interested in what level of magical power this guy has. Well, definitely not above her. Approaching the magic crystal, he thinks what is best to do. In the past it was stressful to attract a lot of attention, and is it not better to cheat? These thoughts visit his head, but remembering who is behind him, he decides to show himself and finally get rid of annoying classmates. As soon as he touched, at the same second, all the colors of the elements lit up the Comanche. He persistently decided to show all his strength, and once he had the opportunity to measure the magic of a great saint, why not take advantage of the situation? The crystal began to shine even brighter, so much so that it was easy to go blind or lose consciousness. Soon the light illuminated the entire Magic Academy, and everyone in the neighborhood noticed it. The blue-haired woman could not understand what was going on here, and all she had to do was watch with her mouth open. But soon the crystal could not withstand such power, and overflowing with such great strength, he tore and threw out all the accumulated bright mana, and it hit the territory of the academy. The device itself burst into flames, and the crystal shattered into small fragments. The watching fir trees withstood a similar test. The impact force almost demolished them. The Minato itself is unpleasantly surprised. The crystal broke even though it was not completely filled. It can be seen that it will not be possible to measure the force this time. The guy is distracted by the teacher, who asks if the student was injured and says that he sees this for the first time, but most likely the device was defective. Now the teacher should figure out what to do, because the magical power of Minato could not be measured, and the element of his magic is also incomprehensible. An adult man was going to evaluate the abilities of each and, based on the results, divide the class into groups, but there is nothing to be done, so the teacher asks the red-haired Tanada to accept the boy into his group. After looking at his comrades, with dark intentions, he gladly agrees to accept the guy into his ranks. The teacher knew that he could be relied on, but in fact the man gave a great opportunity to take off, which he was looking forward to.